everyone to the Campus Pride Spotlight Series. My name is Ayla Azim and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm an intern with Campus Pride. For those who don't know, Campus Pride is a leading national nonprofit that empowers student leaders and groups working to create equitable LGBTQ+ college campuses. Learn more at campuspride.org. Today, I will be interviewing Ithaca College for the Campus Pride Spotlight Series. This series is all about what campuses offer today's LGBTQ+ students, our diverse gender and sexuality spectrum. We will highlight colleges and universities that are providing LGBTQ+ inclusivity on their campuses and learn more about their programs and services. I want to introduce to you the representative from Ithaca College now. Thank you so much for meeting with me today for the Campus Pride Spotlight Series. Welcome. Please introduce yourself. Please provide your name, your pronouns, and your role on campus.
Thanks so much, Ayla. I'm so delighted to be here. My name is Luca Maurer. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the director of the LGBT Center at Ithaca College.
Thank you so much for your introduction, and thank you so much for being here today. It's wonderful to have you. You have a 5 out of 5 star rating on the Campus Pride Index at campusprideindex.org, and you've been ranked among the best of the best in terms of LGBTQ+ friendly colleges and university campuses. So congratulations.
Thank you.
To start out, tell us what are some things that are on your campus for LGBTQ+ life, and specifically, what does your campus do for LGBTQ+ students to help create an inclusive space?
Sure. Well, again, I'm just honored and humbled to be here. And first, I want to say that obviously I work very hard to center and bring to light all of the needs and the interests of our LGBTQ+ students and faculty and staff. But there are many, many people that are part of our institution, part of our campus community that partner with me in these efforts as well. And so I'm so honored and more honored because this really reflects the dedicated efforts of students, staff, faculty, alumni, and represents the coming to fruition of the work that some of our alumni back when they were students back more than 20 years ago laid the groundwork for, laid the foundation for, when it was their vision to have a campus-based LGBT center. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude for all of their service. All of those former students are still in touch with our office. And that is really important to me. That they and our current students feel a sense of ownership of what the center is, because really at the center of everything, if you will, are our students. And so I guess I would start out just to say that at Ithaca College, we strive to not only accept LGBTQ students, but to expect LGBTQ students in our classrooms, on our playing fields, in our student clubs, in our labs, in our studios, and our performance spaces, and every aspect that is Ithaca College as an institution. And I would also add that this designation I find even more meaningful this year as our nation confronts racism while we face a global pandemic too. And neither of these issues are new to my work or to the work of the LGBT Center, but just recognizing the environments that we are all living and working and going about daily life in. We're really honored to be among this group. And so I think you asked a little bit about some of the things that the Center for LGBTQ Education, Outreach, and Services provides. The center was created because LGBTQ students hadn't been receiving what they needed to succeed, as I said, back in the 1980s, the 1990s, and before. And at that time, a group of very dedicated students got together to create a proposal that there should be this center and there should be a person in the role that I am in now. And we've never lost sight of that history. Our history as a center at our institution was rooted in striving for equity and support for and by our students. And so again, students are really at the center of everything that I do. At Ithaca College, students are our why. And so since its founding, the center has been at the forefront in a variety of ways that exemplify the needs and the interests and the experiences that our LGBTQ students have held up to us as needs that needed to be answered. And so those include one of the first individualized transgender and non-binary student housing processes at any campus in the nation. We also, we didn't know it at the time, but we did create the first campus-based LGBTQ plus student tobacco cessation and prevention initiative in the country. As I said, we didn't know it at the time. Later on, folks contacted us to replicate our program and noted to us that they weren't aware of any other campus-based efforts at that time. It was quite a long time ago. We also created more than 10 years ago now a voice and communication clinic for transgender and non-binary people, again, that serves our students, faculty, and staff at no charge, and serves members of our local larger community at a very nominal fee. And so students can partake of those services. We also have master's degree students who are part of that clinic, who are learning that very important and very, very specific subspecialty, who have had amazing experiences learning that specialty in our speech pathology department. We are one of the places that was involved from the very beginning in International Pronouns Day, and we celebrate every year along with our local mayor, who issues a proclamation every year in support. We have, again, not just this year, but for many years running, have held work groups on not just understanding racism and white supremacy, but work groups on how to take anti-racist actions, how to do anti-racism. And again, for me, there's no such thing as LGBTQ equity and justice without racial justice. And again, to me, that's where those intersections become so very important to center in everything that we do. We have a variety of student organizations that are focused on lots of different themes, ranging from general support and education to spirituality and to supporting our scholar athletes. We have a variety of policies and promising practices to best support our LGBTQ students, like the ability that our students have had now for several years to change their gender with a simple self-designation on our campus, to change their gender of record, their gender marker at Ithaca College, simply by stating, this is my gender, if it's different than the one that they came in with. And of course, I hope we'll talk about this a little bit later, an award-winning local LGBTQ plus history tour, a walking tour that students created with my office just last year. And so again, these are just some of the initiatives that we've put into place, but all were as a result of students themselves seeking equal access to everything that Ithaca College offers, or by working collaboratively with the center to further equity and justice.
Wow, really? That's a really good answer.
I was going to say, did I answer the question? I think I did, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what example can you share that signifies the importance of having a space on campus for an LGBTQ plus student?
So, that's a great question. Again, as I said, the center was established a long time ago, back in 2001, and it was directly as the result of advocacy by our LGBTQ plus students. And at that time, heterosexual cisgender allies worked in solidarity alongside them in an effort to address long-standing issues that LGBTQ plus students had of being underserved or not having their needs met. And one of the central pieces of those long ago students' work was that we needed spaces, both physical spaces and emotional spaces, and now virtual spaces. We didn't have a lot of virtual spaces back in 2000, spaces to reduce social isolation, which we know is something that uniquely impacts LGBTQ plus students, again, especially in environments that are rife with racial injustice and, of course, the impacts of COVID-19, and spaces and opportunities to increase connectedness to campus and to peers and to staff and faculty, again, all in the service of increasing our LGBTQ plus students' academic success. And so the center is yes, about a space, and that space can be both physical and also virtual and also sort of all around us. We can sort of design bubbles in which we can create and hold space for people to form relationships with each other and build meaningful community and a sense of belonging, while we treat each individual LGBTQ plus person with dignity and respect and as a person of worth. And so again, we used to talk very specifically about the physical space of the center. And again, unfortunately and fortunately, COVID-19 has made us think much more broadly about how we've always done work that partially is based on a sense of physical place, but also is based on a sense of social place, right? Meaning LGBTQ plus students have a sense that there is a community around them supporting them, whether we can be together in the same room or not, that we are all pulling for each other, that LGBTQ plus students matter, and that all of this is in order to create a campus that's inclusive and welcoming and affirming and the optimum learning environment for every single student. And again, that means different things to different people. And some of the barriers and challenges that we've faced, particularly in this past 9 months or so due to COVID-19, have made us much more aware of how we can be more effective in addressing inequity and injustice and making spaces welcoming and affirming to LGBTQ plus folks in all of our diversity. Again, when an LGBTQ plus student comes into my office or comes into our center or comes into my Zoom room, they don't just bring their LGBTQ self, they bring everything about themselves, their race, their ethnicity, their faith tradition, their socioeconomic status, their family constellation, everything about them. And the center is about recognizing that as LGBTQ folks, we may have one or two things in common, and the rest about us is highly individualized and different. And it's important, again, to center that and make sure that everything the center does and everything the center offers centers students who are from historically marginalized or underserved communities, because that's the way that we can make sure that we're being the most inclusive. The design and the delivery of everything that we do obviously, if it's designed for students who experience the most kinds of marginalization, it will also therefore be accessible to folks who have more privilege rather than the reverse. A lot of institutions, set up services and programs and policies that sort of assume students with the most privileged identities and backgrounds. And that means then lots of students are counted out. Again, a lot of times this is unintentional, but the impact is very, very real and significant. And so what we strive to do in everything that we do at Ithaca College's center is to flip that script and say, no, we are going to center students who historically have been underserved, underrepresented, experienced marginalization, particularly students at those intersections of social identities that experience marginalization. And we're going to make sure that what we're creating works for students in those intersections so that it will work for everyone.
That was a marvelous answer, Genj.
Okay.
And it perfectly leads to another question I had, which was, how does your campus specifically support students across their different intersections of identity?
Well, that's a fantastic question again. The center has always centered student needs, whether they come up independently, individually by a student, whether they're about academics, or through non-LGBTQ specific student organizations too. Again, the center has something for everyone. And that means we think that not just LGBTQ plus student organizations, but non-LGBTQ themed student organizations have roles to play in this too. And so again, what we want to do is create and maintain an atmosphere that's about prioritizing belonging and connectedness. And so prioritizing students with underrepresented or underserved identities, members of historically marginalized groups, and putting an emphasis on intersectional, anti-oppression, and anti-racist work. So some of the issues impacting students right now are very different from when the center was first founded, and others are unfortunately pretty similar to even 20 years ago. So for instance, pervasive structural racism continues to impact everyone and compounds the challenges that many LGBTQ plus people experience. And so one big change during during this last year has been a renewed vigor and a renewed focus on not just making sure that the LGBT Center has this front of mind, but also my office, myself, and our students working across departments and offices and organizations on campus that are not LGBTQ plus specific, but that we want to assist in sort of reframing what they're doing. And so that means everything from working with our performing arts faculty to create Pride dance classes, to working with our chaplain and our religious organizations to lead an LGBTQ plus themed student-led Havdalah service, to a discussion about LGBTQ plus people and intimate partner violence, do-it-yourself name change workshops, LGBTQ plus trivia nights, viewing parties, and also developing a comprehensive, not just services and programs, but a comprehensive one-stop webpage of resources specifically about ways that COVID-19 impacts LGBTQ individuals, across racial and ability experiences and lenses, and ways to cope and to support others. So we created it to be used by students, but also by faculty and staff as a framework for all their efforts. And so, again, I've spent a lot of time, particularly in this past year, co-facilitating our Doing Anti-Racist Work group. And it was truly a work group to decide, first to unpack anti-Blackness and white supremacy in the United States, and then to figure out how each of us individually were going to go about acting in anti-racist ways, right? And so that's one way that we do it. Another way, obviously, is through some of our events and services, like most recently, our Transgender Day of Remembrance observance, that was about both mourning the folks that we have lost, who, again, are unfortunately primarily young trans and gender nonconforming women of color, and unraveling the pernicious ways that racism and misogyny collide together to put people at risk. Again, it's not being a trans woman of color that puts someone at risk. It's not being an LGBTQ person that puts someone at risk. It's living in a society that is overtly hostile and has racism and anti-Blackness and misogyny and homophobia and transphobia swirling in this mire that puts folks in deadly intersections. Again, it's not because of them as individuals. It's about living in a society rife with this kind of violence and toxicity. And so, again, I feel like we do a lot, and there's always more work to do. Because again, I truly believe, and I try to live and practice in my work every day, that LGBTQ plus liberation that's not intersectional isn't LGBTQ plus liberation at all. There's much more work to do to dismantle oppression and to make systems and policies and practices represent what all the research and what our lived experiences tell us best support LGBTQ plus student success. And so over time, some of our efforts will evolve and change. If they didn't, that wouldn't be representative of what is needed. But our focus will always be on students.
Really good. So how do students feel about the inclusive policies on campus for LGBTQ plus students?
That's a great question. And all of our students right now, we have a modified schedule, again, because of the pandemic. All of our students right now are in their final exam period, which has been shrunk from 6 days to 4 days. And so they're super stressed. And so I wish that we could have been joined by some students so that they can talk directly from their experiences. I'm not going to try to do that. What I would suggest is there are lots of ways that you can connect with our current students and our alumni to ask them about their experiences. One thing that comes to mind right away is that one of our young alums, John Jacobson, was able to not only chronicle their experience of our changing of that gender marker policy on campus, but also chronicle how it was we could do that, right? So that other institutions maybe could borrow from us or learn from what worked and what didn't work on our campus. And you can read both John's feelings about what happened and also how that came to be actually on Campus Pride's website on the blog. They were invited to write about it a couple of years ago. And so I encourage you to check that out. John is now out in the world, has a terrific, two terrific jobs actually, and you can also find them on Twitter. They also happen to be an editor of romance novels for a publishing house that specifically centers writers of color and LGBTQ plus folks and folks with disabilities. And so again, they have put into practice some of the things that they learned and honed as a student in one of their professions today. And so I encourage you to read John's words. I encourage you to check out the Instagram accounts of some of our LGBTQ student clubs. And again, there's a lot of information on our Campus Pride profile that includes the thoughts and experiences of our students. But I would never presuppose that I could speak for them. And they also know we do a lot of events for prospective students. They always know that the last thing I always say to them before we go live into a room or online to talk about experiences is that I really remind them, tell your own stories and tell your own truth. And that may mean that there are things that the Center or Ithaca College did for you that were really helpful. And that probably means there were things that happened that were not helpful at all. Share all of it. Don't leave out a thing, right? Because all of those are important for prospective students to know about.
That was really good. So if an LGBTQ plus student, so are there any active out LGBTQ plus student leaders across campus?
Oh, yes, of course. And again, some of them are places where you might expect, like in some of our LGBTQ plus student clubs, right? And again, at any given time, we may have between 4 and 8 different LGBTQ plus student clubs with all different themes. And certainly you'll find student leaders there. But again, one of the things, and I'm very proud of those students and everything that they accomplish and everything that they are. And another aspect of Ithaca College that I'm very proud of is we have lots and lots of out LGBTQ plus student leaders in non-LGBTQ plus positions. For instance, we have a number of out LGBTQ plus students in our Student Government Council. We've had a number of student body presidents that were out LGBTQ plus students. Again, dating back more than a decade. I can remember the first student who ran their student government campaign as a completely out candidate. At that time, it seemed like a very big deal, and it was. But that has been repeated 4 or 5 times now in the time that I've been at Ithaca College. And so I look to those leaders. I look to our leaders, our student athletes. Again, incredible, amazing, talented, dedicated scholar athletes who are also LGBTQ+. Some of them working very diligently for increased equity, increased inclusion, especially for our transgender and non-binary athletes, but also across all dimensions of equity and justice. I have a number of LGBTQ+ student athletes who are very focused on a couple of work groups in athletics that are about racial justice and addressing white supremacy. We have, again, you name the student club, we count among our friends and our allies and our out students, folks in every student club, from our ping pong club to our professional organization for students in cinematography, and that's quite a range. And in student organizations from fencing to our trombone studio, right? And so again, that's what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for sort of traditionally, I think, and when I entered the field, I feel like I'm sounding like an old person now, but when I entered the field, I think a lot of folks assumed LGBTQ students would want to go into LGBTQ plus professions, and that's somewhat true, right? Like some people want a job like me. I think that's great, and I love mentoring students who want to do that. But real equity and justice means that LGBTQ plus students should be able to go into whatever they want, right? That they should be able to aspire untethered. And I really think that if I am doing my job correctly, it's supporting the students who want to go into an LGBTQ plus themed job or volunteer role as well, and also reminding everyone and having representation and visibility for all the out LGBTQ plus artists and folks in communication and folks in mathematics. And I mean, like the world needs more gay accountants, right? And no, for real. And I could use a gay accountant, frankly, to help me figure out my budget. But again, I feel like a lot of folks, when they finally have done all of the work, sometimes very hard work and struggle to understand and own their identity, that they feel that then that determines like everything in their life, right? It like their future is foreclosed upon. Okay, well, you're a gay person, you're gonna do something gay. And and again, that's great for folks who want to do that. But I want to live in a world again with LGBTQ plus educators, LGBTQ plus physicians and therapists, LGBTQ plus performers who are out, LGBTQ plus government officials. And again, we're seeing a little more of that. And I just heard about some of the new presidential appointments the other day. Like we're seeing a little bit more of that. But again, I think we have far, far to go. And my hope is that by my office supporting all these students, again, from the fencing club to the trombone studio and from our occupational therapy department, right, all the way to our folks studying elementary education, that what I'm doing is providing opportunities for students to dream untethered about who and what they will be in life.
That was a really good answer.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
So clearly, like things obviously are constantly evolving and changing.
Yes.
LGBTQ plus inclusivity is constantly growing, even in just society. So, what's on the agenda for your campus within the next 2 to 3 years?
That's a great question. I'm going to pause and take a breath because I feel like I've talked a ton. The quick and immediate answer is what's on the agenda for the next 2 or 3 years is new topics and new content, but again, still with students at the center. And so partly I can't answer that question because I wouldn't want to work as part of an institution where I got to decide things. Like really and truly, like I said, our students are our why. They are at the center of everything that we do. And so what I want to know is what's exciting, challenging, upsetting, frightening, joyous for our current students, and how does that translate into what we do in the next 2 or 3 years, right? How can I best serve the needs and the interests of students? I have some ideas around that, and again, I think some of it definitely is addressing the ongoing and generational trauma, particularly for our students who have marginalized social identities, particularly for students of color, and other students who have experienced lots of marginalization, students across varying immigration statuses, for instance, students who are veterans, that sort of thing. But that's sort of a general idea. What I want to know is, what do students want and need? The other thing that I would say that is probably more specific is where I want to go, of course, with students in mind, is to places where, I really think, again, for us to go to untethered places, not just in terms of our lives and our careers, but what we expect. Remember, I said Ithaca College doesn't just accept you. We expect you. We want to build programs and services that say, hey, we knew you were coming, and we built these policies and programs and services for you. We don't want, it used to be when I first was in my office, a student would walk by my door and be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And they'd be so delighted that there was an LGBT center. And that's great, but I want folks to aspire higher, right? Like, I know that might sound weird, but like for way too long, LGBTQ plus people have been grateful for really small acts of inclusion when true equity requires far, far more. And so what do I see on the 2 to 3 year horizon? I see that I think higher ed can and must do much better. We need to continue, of course, at the very center of that, shining a really bright light on oppression and work actively to dismantle injustice. And again, I think for some folks, they will be like, wait, what, aren't you happy when people walk by your door? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're here. And I'm like, I am happy that you're here. Again, because when you, whoever you are, when you step into my office or my Zoom room, right, you reflect back to me the incredible diversity that is our strength in the LGBTQ plus community. And again, like, I'm just bowled over by everyone that's part of our communities. And at the same time, I don't want to live on a campus or in a world where that's so delightful that there's an office that recognizes that LGBTQ plus students deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And so, yeah, on my near horizon is pushing and pushing and pushing within the institution with students at the center for what they want and need, and being a model and an example for higher ed across the country. Again, we've had a couple opportunities over the years to do what was right for students and then have other students and other campuses take note and say, oh, we want to replicate your program. And so I'm hoping that we can both get traction on raising the bar for what students should be able to expect and what their loved ones should be able to expect, and pushing our, not our profession, because I think LGBTQ plus directors in higher ed are where it's at, obviously, but pushing higher education as a whole to again say, we see you, we honor you, we respect you. We built this with you in mind, not we built this whole thing and, oh, wait, later on, 100 years later, we retrofitted this policy to include some words, right? Policies are important. Accountability is where it's at. And so that's what I hope, where I hope to be in 2 to 3 years, is do our words match our actions, and how can we do it better?
That was really good.
Thanks.
So how are in 3 words, how would you describe your campus for LGBTQ plus life, and any closing
In
statements?
3 words, you know, I have lots of words. Do I have any left? I would say, I can't count up these words. This is roughly 3 words because one's hyphenated. I would say it's about innovation, being student-centered. I'm counting those as just 2 words. And then, like I said, it's about the connectedness of our community. Again, even at Ithaca College, which is not a large institution, we don't just have one LGBTQ plus community. We are a community of many communities that overlap and intersect in lots of, again, in beautiful, unexpected, joyous, surprising ways. And so I think it's about that connection of community, innovation, and student-centeredness. I realize I cheated. That's more than 3 words. And again, if you want to replicate that kind of cheating on your campus, don't, with all due respect, don't let anyone limit you and say, if you want one thing, what do you want? Tell them the 3 things you want, right? And if someone says, what are the 2 things that are going to make it better for LGBTQ plus students? Say, well, which LGBTQ students, and how are we centering the folks, right, that have the least access and the least privilege? So yeah, I didn't follow your rules. I'm really sorry. So maybe that's what I'm saying is, yeah, understand how change is made, understand the processes at your particular school about how positive change is made, and then figure out how do you use that to achieve what is needed. And sometimes it means giving a 5-word answer to something that was supposed to be 3 words. And other times it means saying, I don't know. Have you talked to any students, right? Or how can we bring students into this, right? So to make sure that we know what students want from whatever process you're engaging in.
Thank you so much. It's honestly been such a joy to have you here.
You're very kind.
Please share for those watching on your website to learn more about LGBTQ plus life on your campus. Again, thank you so much for being here. It's honestly been great. And Campus Pride appreciates your hard work and continued efforts to create an inclusive space for LGBTQ plus students to learn, live, grow, and thrive at Ithaca College. Your work really makes such a positive difference in so many lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And again, it's my honor and my privilege that I get to walk alongside our LGBTQ plus students and our heterosexual cisgender students for just a tiny portion of their lives. It's really an honor and a privilege. And having you all at Campus Pride be our guiding light and be really the force behind everything that we do, being so student centered. I just really appreciate all that you all do for all of us and for students nationwide. So thank you very much. And it's been terrific to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for watching the Campus Pride Spotlight series. If you wish to learn more about this campus or any college or university, you can search for free at the Campus Pride Index online at campusprideindex.org. That's campusprideindex.org for over 400 plus colleges and universities who have come out as LGBTQ plus friendly. Again, my name is Isla, and thank you so much for watching.